That's Brian Wilson, along with Beach Boys' Al Jardine and Blondie Chaplin, a song called Sail Away from the new Brian Wilson solo album entitled No Peer Pressure. This is an album that's been some years in the making. We finally got it a few weeks ago. Endless Summer Quarterly's editor David Beard joins us once again as we take a look at a Beach Boys-related album and go track by track and review and discuss it. Always great to have him in on these conversations. And David, when I first got this record, by the way, we're going to be talking about the 16-track deluxe edition because that's the one most commonly found and the one that you all should get if you're going to get this record. But when I first got it, I put it in the car and I listened to it over and over and over again. I stayed up until 4 a.m. listening to this record. I was so elated. David, what was your listening experience like with this for the first time?
The one word that comes to mind is just happiness.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a Beach Boy nut, and it's great when you're waiting and you're anticipating, and you put it on and you feel euphoric because of something coming out of a speaker. I hope that's something that I never lose, that connection to music. And so when I put the album on and one song after the other, I just felt like, wow, I was just really impressed. And the one thing I want to say on top of that is Joe Thomas, you can feel his touch. If anyone's familiar with Brian's 1998 Imagination album, and you're familiar with the sound that Joe brought to the table, which was more of a glossy pop sound.
Right.
Here, it's not quite as glossy. It's well produced and polished, but we feel Joe's presence. But it's still very much a Brian Wilson album, and I kind of feel like Joe Thomas is a modern day. And I say this carefully because I'm not saying he is this person or comparing him to this person. But on Pet Sounds was great because Tony Asher and Brian Wilson were somewhat the same age and were going through similar things in their lives. Therefore, the collaborative process was something that turned into something really beautiful.
True.
The same could be said on Smile, when Van Dyke Parks and Brian were working together. And any collaborative process that works well is when two people are feeding off of one another and you get something really special from that. It could just be the two people who feel they've gotten something special from it. But with an artist like Brian Wilson, someone who's, been making great music since 1961, you're familiar with the person. So I think Joe Thomas deserves an immense amount of respect and credit for what he has done with Brian on this album, because we don't get what we get from Brian on this album unless that collaborative process is working.
We should mention that some of the songs on this record, and we are going to go track by track like we usually do. We're not going to play all the songs on the show, but we'll play a few of them. Some of the songs, like Guess You Had to Be There and the last song, Runaway Dancer, some of these songs were either played on radio or released as YouTube videos, and some I liked more than others, but I will say that when you listen to them in the context of the album, this is an old school album. You have to listen to it from start to finish. It all makes sense, and those songs benefit from the other material around them. And we begin with cut number 1, This Beautiful Day, which is sort of like if anyone has the Friends album from 1968. It begins with a beautiful little snippet to set up the record called Meant for You. This is almost like Meant for You 2015.
Yeah, the lyrics, I think, are life goes on and on. Like your favorite song, what we feel inside on this wayward ride. If we could find a way, if we would only stay, if we could hold on to this feeling in this beautiful day. It's like an introductory snippet of, okay, I'm back, get ready.
Yep.
And here we go.
It sets the mood for the album.
Well, it kind of does in a way, because you think, okay, yeah, this is what I'm expecting. It's got the nice, lovely harmonies, that cool instrumentation that Brian Wilson uses, and then bam,
oh, yeah.
We're into the next track, Runaway Dancer with Sabu Saminian from Capital Cities Group, who I don't know anything about. I hope I said his last name correctly. This song is something that you would hear in dance clubs, and if anybody who's in a dance club one night hears Runaway Dancer, and they go, that was Sabu from Capital Cities with Brian Wilson, there's not a soul in there who would be in that dance club who would know who Brian Wilson is.
Right.
But that's kind of the beauty of it, that Brian has never done this genre of a song. I mean, the guy kind of owns pop music, but he's never done this style with anybody.
And I have to tell you, when I first heard this song, I didn't know what to make of it, because you're right, this isn't a style that we associate with Brian Wilson. And it took a bunch of listens. In fact, again, when I heard it in the context of the album, it started to make more sense, because as we'll see, there are a variety of different styles on No Peer Pressure. Although I have to say, I kind of wish it was placed later in the album, because to go from This Beautiful Day into the song that's track 3 on this album, Whatever Happened, what an emotional 1-2 punch that would have been.
Yeah, I don't know who had the final say. I haven't been able to conduct my interviews yet with Brian and Joe Thomas, so I don't know who had final say on the sequencing, because That's Why God Made the Radio in 2012, this album, the CD sequence is different from the 2 LP set.
Right.
So I don't know who does that. I'm not sure who's making those decisions. But whatever happened, I think for me personally, the discussion that I want people to hear and to understand is Beach Boy Al Jardine, Brian's bandmate for so many years, as well as David Marks, Beach Boy David Marks are on this track. But Al Jardine's voice is a very important voice. We talked about this the last time we spoke.
Yeah.
Is a very important voice in the rock music industry. And if you want proof, if you really need to hear why I think that or I say that, you could listen to any Beach Boys album, or you could if you buy this new album, you'll hear exactly what I'm talking about. And Brian's brilliant on this album. He sounds great. The music's great, but whenever Al shows up, it's like having a friend over.
Yeah.
And and the friend makes the party better. You're already having a great dinner party, and then Al walks in the door, lends his voice, and you just went from 100% great quality song to 200% great quality song.
Yeah, and Al is all over this record. I just want to mention the lyric content to Whatever Happened, because it's something that a lot of people can relate to. You go through life, and for whatever reason, the places you used to go to are no longer around. People you knew aren't around anymore. And the song speaks to that kind of sadness.
Yeah, and from Brian's perspective, what I gleaned from this was his home is no longer there in Hawthorne. It's a monument. He used to go to Wallace's music store when he was a kid in high school. He'd go there and he'd stop by and he'd put the headphones on and listen to the hit records of the day. That's gone.
Yeah.
I don't know specifically what Joe Thomas wrote and what Brian wrote, but the fact that they could get this from each other through the collaborative process because they're similar in age and are going through similar things and observations speaks again to the writing collaborative process on this album with Joe Thomas and Brian Wilson.
As the time goes by.
Just a beautiful track, one of several top-notch ballads on the new Brian Wilson album, No Peer Pressure. My guest today is editor of Endless Summer Quarterly magazine, David Beard, who joins us all the time to chat about Beach Boys-related things. And as we continue on with the track listing here, we're up to cut 4, On the Island, a song featuring Zooey Deschanel, the actress, and musician M. Ward. Together they record under the name She and Him. And this is just a neat little bossa nova ditty.
Yeah, it's really kind of a fun recording, and it leaks over into the exotica genre.
Yes.
Which is fun. It's just another Brian Wilson, Joe Thomas track where we see, okay, now they're doing this genre. Joe has worked with Brian now. This is their 4th time working together. First time was the Beach Boys' 1996 Stars and Stripes project. Mm-hmm. Second time was Brian's 1998 Imagination album. Third time was 2012's That's Why God Made the Radio, and this is the 4th time. I feel like Joe and Brian have gone from professional to personal relationship, and we, the listener, are benefiting from it.
And they're getting adventurous. They're feeling a little more free. Like you said, this is the 4th time they've collaborated. So we're getting things like Runaway Dancer and On the Island from them. And you know what? I think of Half Moon Bay, the next track as sort of a companion piece to On the... We're singing about going to the island, and then we're there on the next track.
Yeah, to me too. And when's the last time we've had a nice instrumental from Brian
absolutely.
Wilson?
Yeah.
You know, Mark Isham is I think he's a well-known trumpeter.
Yes.
But I don't think that has anything to do with this song. I mean, I don't mean to take away from him. But, you know, this to me is not a guest star song. This to me is a great, lovely instrumental segue that primes you for the next song. It reminds me a little bit of Diamond Head.
Diamond Head, yep. And that moves into another cut that we got earlier than the majority of the cuts we got here from Brian featuring Peter Hollins, who I have to say, I don't really know much about other than I think he does a cappella YouTube videos.
Yeah. This came out on his album the fall of last year. So we were familiar with this song, and the first thing I heard in this song was this had to be a Beach Boys song at one point, or was going to be a Beach Boys song at one point. And it turned out, after I spoke to Joe Thomas about this track, he said that the very beginning of it, the very first piece, was in fact a Beach Boys idea. In other words, Brian started to write. This was still during the 2012 tour. Brian had an idea, a musical idea, not thinking, oh, this is going to be for the next Beach Boys album. Just a snippet, an idea. And from those voices, one being a bassoon, one being a clarinet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just kind of that range, that orchestral mindset that Brian has when he composes and writes and comes up with new ideas. So this was one of those songs that had that idea in mind, and as he went forward.
For me, because this had been released on the Peter Hollins album, in my mind, I mean, this probably isn't fair, but I think of it more as a song from his record that's making an appearance on this album.
I think of it the same way.
Yeah.
But that's one of those messy. But I think we would think that way about any of these songs had they appeared somewhere else first.
Sure, of course. And that takes us to the next cut on the album, which we've already talked about when we had our LA Light album discussion, because it was the new song at the time, The Right Time, featuring David Marks. And once again, the voice of Al Jardine, who is all over this record. It's always great to hear him, and I wish more people knew what an incredible vocalist Al Jardine is.
Well, let's do our due diligence then, and point people to his website, aljardine.com.
Oh, yeah.
And also mention if you go to Amazon.com, just type in Al Jardine, or type in a postcard from California, and I tell your listeners to do themselves a favor and either download that CD, or even better, to buy the CD if they're old school like you and me and want the actual CD, because Postcards from California has the Beach Boys on Don't Fight the Sea, all of them, including the late Carl Wilson.
Yep.
And Brian is on, I think, 4 tracks.
Yeah.
And speaking of this track on this album, coming back to No Pier Pressure, The Right Time also includes Matthew Jardine, who's all over Al's solo album.
Yeah.
So, and I think we should talk about Matt for just a second.
Sure.
Because Matt's voice, when it shows up, it's uncredited, but you can hear it, and it's distinctive, and it's like a vocal pillow of support wherever it shows up.
Indeed. Now, the next song up is one of those songs that features a young guest star, this time Casey Musgraves. I'm not familiar with her, but the first time I heard this song, I've been talking about listening to these songs within the context of the album, but when I heard this one outside of the context of the album, I liked it immediately. The music suggests a happy-go-lucky summer afternoon. It's Guess You Had to Be There.
It's a great song. It is one of my favorites for sure. Casey, for this track, she's a Grammy-winning country recording artist.
Right.
And we do, for the listener, you're going to hear lots of fun banjo picking.
Oh, yeah.
And I like that a lot. Casey wrote this 2 short verses, and Brian wrote the rest in terms of the lyrics. So she wrote Guess You Had to Be There, Such a Different Place, You Should Have Called Me for That Real Good Time. So she wrote those little chunks. That's what she brought lyrically. And then the rest was written by Brian. And I found it intriguing because it's kind of almost, I don't know what other song to compare it to other than God Only Knows. God Only Knows has always had that weird lyric to it. And it was, it took me years to kind of try to figure out what that meant to me when I listened to those words, because is he telling the girl that he's going to be better off without her? He wants to move on? What is he really saying? It's kind of like a mixed message in a love song.
Yeah.
And this song is kind of like that, too, because as he's going, and it is happy-go-lucky, you're hearing these words. Brian is singing. Let me see if I can find it. We were sharing a new day, singing a song, and everyone's problems were suddenly gone. Okay, we hear that. There were winners and losers, and people passed out on my floor. Okay, so things are still okay. Now we're having such a good time. We're having a party. Now people are passed out, and then but yet we come back to the part where he says, everything I ever wanted was right in front of my face because all the beautiful people were always at my place. So he's saying I was the dude. I was happening. I mean, this to me, when I listen to this song, doesn't matter that Casey's singing it. Doesn't matter because it's a Brian Wilson song. I kind of feel like we're getting this review mirror into Brian's life when he was at the top of his game in the 60s. And so at the end of the song, we were sharing a new day, sipping on a new wine, and everyone's problems were suddenly mine. when all you ever wanted is right in front of your face, it starts out as a good thing, turns into a headache. And
right.
Then it ends, and it's like, wait a minute. What just happened?
Well, we should have a Brian Wilson X-Files department.
We could bring in the CSI investigation
right.
team. That's one of the things that is always uniquely Brian Wilson.
That's a track from Brian Wilson's new solo album, No Peer Pressure, a song called Don't Worry. Our guest today is Endless Summer Quarterly's editor, David Beard, as we review and discuss this record. David, I have to tell you, I've read a lot of mixed reviews of that particular song, and I just don't get it, because to me, this is one of, if not my favorite song on the album.
This is my favorite track on the album.
Oh, see, you and I are pretty close on this.
I can't believe that a guy who's 72 has recorded this song. Brian finally took his love of Burt Bacharach and made it into a rock and roll song. It's as if Brian went back in a time machine and met a 15-year-old Burt Bacharach and said, listen, you're not going to do slow, sappy stuff. This is what we're going to do. You're going to do Beach Boys music with me. and to me, this is a marriage of those sounds. This is like taking Beach Boys' high-fueled, fun, I get around energy, and taking Burt Bacharach, like you're rubbing the paddles together and saying, clear,
right.
And then, ow. And this is what comes out of the speakers.
And you know what? As strange as this may sound, I don't think this song is on the standard version of the record. I think it's only on the deluxe version.
Let me see. Give me a second. It's not. You're right.
Crazy.
It's insane to me. It's like with the right time going into Guess You Had to Be There, going into Don't Worry. How many albums in the middle get great?
Yeah.
You know, I think my favorite Brian song cycle, and I've loved and continue to love and enjoy that Lucky Old Sun. I think that's a fantastic work.
Mm-hmm.
But that Lucky Old Sun was a different style of thing, and Smile was a different style of thing. Pop record by Brian Wilson. This is the best pop record by Brian Wilson. This is pop. This is even the slow songs, even the quiet stuff. Well, let's go to the next thing and talk about.
Well,
quiet.
You want to talk about a time warp. Here's Brian revisiting an instrumental from 1965, getting together with Scott Bennett. You mentioned that Lucky Old Sun, and Scott Bennett was Brian's collaborator on that record. He's back to pen lyrics with Brian. Brian has re-recorded Beach Boy songs in the past on the Imagination album, Let 'Em Run Wild and Keep an Eye on Summer. Mm-hmm. This time out, of all of those remakes, this is the most creative, to take something that was an instrumental and just turn it into a brand new song.
It is. Yeah, well, certainly, because you're not just re-recording.
Right.
You're doing more than what happened before. And so to come up with lyrics and to put them to and use the melody, yeah, it's a more creative process. It automatically lends itself to a more creative process than if you're just showing up and saying, okay, we're we're just going to put a new arrangement on Let Him Run Wild, or we're just going to re-record Keep an Eye on Summer. I think this is where, and I could be off mark here, but I don't think I am. My gut tells me that we got this because of Joe Thomas's continued love of that period of Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys.
Yeah, probably.
Because imagination, like you just said, we had Keep an Eye on Summer and Let Him Run Wild. Let Him Run Wild is from where?
Yeah.
Summer Days and
Yep.
Summer Nights. So this, Somewhere Quiet is originally Summer Means New Love.
Mm-hmm.
What's it from? Summer Days, Summer Nights.
Same album.
I think there's something special in Joe's life about that album that he is drawn to. I wouldn't be shocked in the least that's the case. That there's something that Joe is really drawn to that period of the Beach Boys era, and just loves it. And probably I wouldn't be shocked if he said, "Hey, Brian,"
Yeah. And continuing with the theme of heartache and loss, which is the undercurrent of this album, we get a song called I'm Feeling Sad. Musically, though, it has a little more in common with Guess You Had to Be There, and that this is sort of an upbeat tune about misery.
Upon first listen, you went, "Oh, he said he's feeling sad?"
Right.
See, you experienced the same thing, and you go, "Well, yeah, that's what it's called."
Right.
Well, wait a minute, let me see. And then he's singing, "'Cause I'm sad, sad when you're not home, sad when I'm all alone, sad as a guy can be."
Right.
I can relate to these lyrics
Sure.
about, I've been through a divorce. I know what it's like to wake up and to be alone and to go through that process. But it's a short song. I think we talked about the shortness of these tracks on a couple of them.
Yeah.
And I think that, for me, is part of the beauty of this album. In the 60s, your biggest hits from the early 60s by the Beatles, the Beach Boys, or whoever you're talking about, Supremes, any group that you can think of, most of the songs were 2 minutes and 30 seconds long. This album is like that in that way. I really feel comfortable saying Brian has returned to form, and that form is the pop music form.
Right. You know, what's interesting is the next track, Tell Me Why. I like the sequencing on the album because you go from a song, I'm Feeling Sad, first line in Tell Me Why, which features Al Jardine, kind of funny but mostly sad.
Yeah, kind of good but mostly bad.
Yeah.
Now, this is a good one. I really do like this. I've been accused of being easy to please. I could get a CD for my birthday, like this album, and I would be the happiest guy on earth. Do I have one song that makes me smile a little bit more, that I sing harder to, that I like it that much more? Yeah, I guess so. But when I listen to this album, I don't think, oh gosh, why is that on there? Or I don't experience where, oh, I don't like this one as much as that other one. I don't experience those things. I'm just so happy to hear Brian Wilson at 72 producing and releasing product like this.
Absolutely. The song up next is the one we started the hour with, Sail Away, featuring Beach Boys' Al Jardine and Blondie Chaplin on this track. Of course, Blondie Chaplin sang lead on Sail on Sailor from the Beach Boys' Holland album. He's back after all these years on this wonderful pop song.
Yeah, I wish that we got to hear Blondie sing more of this song.
Yeah, it's only the first verse, yeah.
Yeah, but, again, here we have Brian, Blondie, and Al. And I do hear Matt in there as well. I listen to this song, and it's got the Sloop John B. riff going.
Yeah.
It's obviously kind of just looking back at, the past and tipping the hat. And it's nice to have Blondie there. He brings a quality to the sound that we don't normally get. A part of me wishes he could have been incorporated more into the album, but I'm glad he's there, and I'm glad he's going to be on Brian's upcoming tour.
Next up, we have the song One Kind of Love, and I've said this about several songs on this record. This might be one of my favorites. Maybe they're all my favorite, but this song, if for nothing else, Brian's vocals, because the way he hits some of these notes, especially the word calling, it's the Brian of 1965.
Yeah, now this song will be appearing in the Love and Mercy film about Brian's life, coming out in theaters on June 5th. It was written with Scott Bennett,
Yep.
like Somewhere Quiet. this song is kind of Brian at his most vocally naked. He's not quite as
well, surrounded by support, and other guest vocalists.
It's possibly the most somber of all the tracks on the collection, but it's pure Brian Wilson.
That's a song called One Kind of Love from Brian Wilson's new solo album, No Peer Pressure. And our guest today is Endless Summer Quarterly's David Beard as we go through and review and discuss this record. The next song up is one called Saturday Night, featuring singer Nate Roos. Now, admittedly, I didn't recognize a lot of the names involved on this record, and I was a little wary about them detracting from the songs. That turned out not to be the case on this album. I think all of these singers complement these songs, and this is another great pop record from Brian Wilson.
With any of these people, whether it's Al Jardine or the fellow Beach Boy members on the album, or whether it's Nate Roos, or whether it's Sabu, or whether it's Casey Musgraves, or She and Him, or Peter Hollins, or Mark Isham, whoever we're talking about, they are all a part of the great picture that's called music, just as much as Brian is. Now, what makes it great for these guest stars who are coming in and being a part of this collection is they're getting to sing with a guy who is a living music legend. And in the case of Al and Blondie and David Marks, they share that category with Brian. That's why I'm so happy about this release and why I enjoy listening to it so much, is because it's a 16-song collection of people enjoying their love for music together, regardless of who they are. Mm. Including all the musicians who we're not even naming who are playing on these tracks.
And that brings us to the last song on the album, which is fittingly titled The Last Song. Now, I've read all manner of speculation about this track. Some say this is Brian announcing his retirement. Some people are saying this is Brian's eulogy for the Beach Boys. I'm not getting that at all. I mean, you think about how this album starts with This Beautiful Day. Life goes on and on, like your favorite song. But the reality is that eventually life ends. And no matter how long you're blessed to be on this planet, the truth remains there never is enough time for the ones you love. And that's what I'm getting from this.
That's all I hear, too.
Yeah.
You could take half the songs on the album and try to tell an alternate story if you wanted to. And say, oh, this is somehow associated with something else. But you know what? That's part of the subjective process.
Right.
To each of us, we take, how we hear something, if we connect to something. We talked about some of these songs where we thought, oh, this, I related the song one way, you related it another,
Mm-hmm.
because of our ages and how we look at things too in our lives. So I think about Brian's gift, for me personally as a fan, as a listener, is that he has that ability to reach me, and surprise me. No Peer Pressure from Brian Wilson is an album I hope that people talk about for years, and I hope it's one of those that in 20 years and 30 years and another 50 years from now that people will still be having a discussion about, because it really, for me personally, is a strong collection of songs that are worth that merit.
Before we go, I know that you wanted to mention something else that was happening Beach Boys related, and it's a song by a young lady. I believe her name was it Kylie Hughes?
Yeah, I just thought, one of the things that we've talked about here with Brian's album that we both like is kind of some of these songs that have this high pop energy to them.
Right.
And lo and behold, here on April 9th, we had a new song come out by a young artist named Kylie Hughes, who we know nothing about.
Yep.
Kylie has released a music video of one song called Calipoppa Cana, and guest starring in this video is Mike Love, lead singer of the Beach Boys.
Yeah, and he's got a funny scene in it, and it's a very Beach Boys influenced cut.
It really is. It just speaks to the longevity of the group's history, the power and the importance of their music, and the legacy that they continue to leave behind with new generations of music. And we see that on Brian's album with these young guest stars.
Right.
We see that now with Kylie Hughes in this new music video, and you got to see the music video. So the listeners need to go to YouTube and just type in Kylie Hughes, which is KYLIEHUGHES. Go there, and you'll see videos pop up on YouTube, and it's called Calipoppa Cana, and the video looks like something shot out of a Frankie and Annette movie from Beach Blanket Bingo or whatever. I mean, It's just very cute, it's very cheesy, it's very corny, and it's just 4 minutes and 14 seconds of fun.
As usual, I would like to give you a chance to let people know about Endless Summer Quarterly. I would think that they could consider this conversation that we just had as something of a trailer for the feature film, which might be the next issue of Endless Summer Quarterly. And where would they get that information?
Oh, you're too kind. Well, I think just because social media being what it is, I think the easiest place to go is to Facebook, and to just type in Endless Summer Quarterly, which will bring you to our page, and like our page, and then you can click on Get Notifications. So when we post something new, you'll know about it. And in the meantime, if you would be interested in subscribing, we'd love to have you as a new subscriber. The magazine is published 4 times a year. It is a physical publication. It's not something that's offered online. But you can go to esquarterly.com, go to Buy ESQ button at the top of the page. That will take you to sample issues, and right in there at the top of that page is you can click on a line that says subscribe to ESQ. This next issue, the summer 2015 issue, which it's in its infancy stage right now.
Right.
But I'm working hard on getting interviews with Brian and Joe, Al, and Blondie. So the readers will be able to listen to the new Brian album and learn more about it, who wrote what on each song, how the process of each song went. So that'll take up a lot of the issue. The other part of the issue, which is a nice nod of the hat to the album we've been talking about, the other album, Summer Days and Summer Nights, which is it will be commemorating its 50th anniversary very soon. And more so, for those people who want to go out on tour, check out BrianWilson.com for Brian's tour dates with Al and Blondie. And be sure and check out thebeachboys.com or MikeLove.com for the shows that Mike will be doing with his good friend Bruce Johnston. And David Marks will be appearing at some of the shows that are overseas in the UK. Everybody wins this summer because the Beach Boys and Brian are both be touring, and so you get to see the Beach Boys no matter who you go see.
Right.
And the Beach Boys this summer, Mike and his tour are going to be celebrating 50 years of the Summer Days album and the 50th anniversary of California Girls. So look for some special songs from that album to be added to the set list.
David, it's always a pleasure. These are my favorite kinds of conversations that we have on the show, and I hope you'll be back soon to talk about Summer Days and Summer Nights, because I don't think we reviewed that particular album.
I'm ready when you are.
Yeah.